You're listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast, the podcast where we delve deeper into landscape business, interviewing legends of the UK landscaping industry. So, join host Nick Ruddle as he explores their thoughts, insights and experiences. That's here on the Grow Landscapers podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Grow Landscapers podcast. I'm Nick Ruddle, and today we're joined by someone who's won loads of awards in the industry and who's also extremely well respected, and literally just a few days ago won the Barley Special Award for Best Design and Build for West Hill. It's Mr. James Scott from the Garden Company. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you, Nick. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. I was there to witness your brilliant achievement, a lifetime achievement. At the Grosvenor on Friday, and what a day it was, and what an achievement that is. But it's not the only award you won, though, is it? You won loads.
We've won a few. We've won quite a few Barley Awards over the year. We've won some SGD awards, and we've won Pro Landscaper Business Awards as well.
It's nice to get recognised on the business side as well as what you do as a company, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is, and most of the awards are based on the schemes that you do, the designs or the builds, but we're big supporters of Pro Landscaper generally, and the Pro Landscaper Business Awards. I think it's a really good angle.
Yeah, well, to let you into a little secret, I'm actually a judge on those Pro Landscaper Awards, and I've awarded you very, very high scores, and I know you won one or a couple. So yeah. But I'm not the only judge who judges for those, so it's not just down to me. But very good, lovely to have you on the show, and really looking forward to hearing all about your story. So
thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, that's an absolute pleasure. I've been trying to get you for a while, as you know, and I'm pleased. I'm pleased that you accepted the invitation. There's some, you're amongst many, many brilliant names in the industry, as you know. You'll just be another addition to that long list of great people in the industry. Okay, so let's start. How long have you personally been in the industry then?
Well, I was quite horrified to work out that it's really 37 years, 31 years with my own business, but I started really straight from school. Right. So when I was, I had even a Saturday job, working for Saturdays and holidays, school holidays, working for a friend who had a forestry business. So probably when I was about 16, I started working in the industry.
Yeah, so it's a real passion, just a natural sort of way for you to go, though, by the sounds of it. I
think so. It was never an intended career, really. I sort of drifted into it. I wanted to do other things, and even when had started working for my friend's forestry business in the holidays, I didn't really quite know what I wanted to do. I know that when I was growing up, I grew up in the Cotswolds, a very beautiful part of the world, and my grandparents had a lovely acre garden in the Slad Valley. If anybody knows the Slad Valley, it's where Laurie Lee lived and wrote Cider with Rosie. Right. And they had a beautiful garden, and my brother and I would spend a lot of time there. But we didn't really. We would do things. We would play in the garden. We would shoot air rifles. Help my gran and granddad a bit, and I loved the space, but never thought I would go into the industry. And then I dropped out of my A-levels after a year, and for want of anything better to do, whilst I was really working out what I was going to do, I went and worked full-time for my friend's forestry business, and I started to sort of drift towards doing that. And I was about to go and start a forestry management course up in the Lake District, and then I met a chap who came to work for the forestry company for a couple of days in his summer holidays, and he was at Merris Wood, and he was telling me all about this sort of landscape design construction course he was doing at Merris Wood. And to be honest, that just sounded much more exciting than going off to do this forestry course. So I quickly found out about that, and quite soon got myself on that course and changed, stopped working for the forestry company, went and worked for a landscape company for 6 months. before going on to the course. And yeah, that's how I sort of started out, or how I ended up studying landscape.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's like sliding doors. One kind of moment like that defines, you know, that action you take at that point defines the rest of your life. And here we are now.
It was really, really significant, significant moment, actually.
Brilliant.
Actually, in a strange way, personally as well, because through my college, people I met there, I met my wife and so on as well. So if it wasn't for that moment, but I guess that's the same for everybody.
It is, isn't it? At every point in your life, every junction in your life, there's something that happens, or you know, decision you make, or someone you meet, and you know, it molds the rest of your life, the shape of your life. So, okay, then, so you've been, you know, unfortunately, you know, you admitting that it's 37 years makes you start to feel a little bit old, doesn't it? But hey ho, I think it's a great achievement and still going strong, obviously. So where did it start then for you in the business? You know, what made you go into business for yourself then, and where did it start? What year did you start your actual business?
Well, when I graduated from college, I worked for a while for a company called that are now Capital Garden Landscapes. I don't think they have their landscape division anymore, but I got a job as a designer manager for a landscape company at the very tender age of 21. So I'd worked a bit in the industry, had my pre-industrial experience year, and I'd spent a year working in America as part of the course and got some experience. But I went right in at the deep end, designing and building gardens in North London, managing the build of them. And I felt really out of my depth with it, but I stuck with it, and you know, I managed to make a decent go of that, and I enjoyed most of it. But after a couple of years, the company I was working for was buying out some other landscape companies, and they amalgamated several companies. And it just so happened when that happened, I stopped enjoying it so much. There was a different management structure. I had a different line manager. I just wasn't really enjoying it. And so at then 23, I just decided that the right thing to do was to go and set my own business up.
Wow, big step, isn't it? Big leap of faith.
Yeah, it's a huge leap of faith, and but people say to me, "Oh, that was really brave." When I look back now, I think it's much braver to do it when you're 33 with a family and a mortgage. Actually, if you do it at 23, you can do it. You've got to, you know, find money for rent and a bit of beer money, but actually you've got much more sort of flexibility in life than when you're older. So when I look back, it was both a really good thing to do, but also quite probably a naive thing to do, because I didn't have that much experience.
Yeah. No, I think it's good at that age. You sort of just, you don't have so much fear, and like you say, you don't have the responsibility, do you? So if you're going to do it any time, it makes sense. But still a bold move, you know. 23, not many people start their own business at 23, do they? So you're obviously well ahead of your mates at the time, no doubt, who probably were in jobs. But okay, so what did the business look like then when you started? I mean, people, vans, tools. I mean, what?
Yeah, well, it was literally two of us set it up. So I had a business partner, and I had that business partner until about 7 years ago when I bought them out.
Okay.
So we set it up, two of us, and literally we bought a van. We basically ran it from a flat. We rented a garage to store things in. So we didn't really have much space, but fortunately, it's the sort of business you can set it up relatively inexpensively for us. So we literally, from finishing work as a designer manager, I even had a little company car at the time. We had a van, and I went out. Basically, I think we had handed our notice in very late in the year, and it got around to Christmas time, and I spent the time between Christmas and New Year walking around the Hampstead Garden suburb and those areas, dropping leaflets through people's doors. And we got a bit of business. We got a few gardening jobs from that. We got a few really small landscape projects, and so that's 31 years ago, and I still have a few of those clients now from all that time ago.
Wow.
It was quite effective.
Yeah, I think customer lifetime value for those customers. I mean, God, unbelievable! 31 years as a client. That says a lot, doesn't it? It says it all. Obviously, do a good job. Brilliant. So it's like a classic kind of Google kind of stories. You start in your garage or your flat or your front room or your bedroom and the garage.
No Google, of course, or mobile phones.
Yeah, exactly. None of that. So excellent. Okay, then. So what does it look like now? So compared to what it was, fast forward 31 years.
Yeah, well, I think, and I say to people that I feel I'm quite pedestrian as a business person. I'm not actually knocking that, but we employ 20 people. We have a network of specialist contractors and specialist professionals that we work with. So we have an office team of 5 people, plus I have some freelance designers I work a lot with, design specialists, planting specialists, and so on. And we also have a really good network of specialist metal workers, lighting people, and so on. So it's very much about the people we employ, but there's also a much sort of bigger picture of people we work with, so that we can, put a really good package together for our clients. And we're really fortunate. When I look back at those days, we did tiny projects. We would have a few days a week gardening, and I would hope to get a little landscape project to fill in a few days a week. And now, we work on some fantastic projects and some quite large projects, which is really satisfying to do. But they might be 6-month projects, for instance.
Where
we have a team.
A far cry from the early days when you're just doing a few bits of gardening and the odd small project to keep the bills paid.
But it's a good way it's a great way to learn.
Oh, absolutely.
It's all building blocks, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Over time. I mean, who would have thought maybe in 31 years ago when you started your business that you'll be where you are now, building the kind of gardens that you do and winning national awards, at the same time. It's pretty impressive, isn't it? Really rewarding. Okay, what would you say, if we go into the business side of things now, then, what would you say the most important elements are to running a successful business? Over the last 31 years, obviously, you've probably seen lots of ups and downs and learnt lots.
Yeah.
What would you say the most important things are?
I think the most important things, there's probably three or four things. Is the absolute thing is if you want to build a business, you want to build a team, you've got to be pretty good with people, and you've really got to take care to look after people, get their respect, build the team. And I think that applies to people that you work with, people that work for you, suppliers, clients. It's all about building trust and respect. Absolutely, it's about building your team and looking after your people. So I think that's a really key thing. And then I think it's about what I qualify this all with is, as I said earlier, I only worked for a business as a manager for 2 years. So the rest of it, I've made it up as I go along, largely. So this is just my opinion. It may be different for different people, but for me, I think it's very much about sort of deciding what you want to do and what your core business is, and then really working hard at that thing. Other people might think it's about spotting different opportunities and going off in different directions. But for me, it was very much about deciding what I wanted to do, and then trying to make sure that when what you're doing is working towards that goal, and does it fit with that agenda of what you want to achieve, and trying not to get drawn with other bits. I also think, as having the experience of doing it, I think one of the really important things is actually trying to get some thinking time for you as an owner manager, and it's very, very easy to get drawn into the business running you. And I've, I can think of several times where I've sort of slipped into that mode over the years, and I've had to have a little bit of a reset to try and get things back where I wanted them to be going.
Just scribbling down loads of notes here whilst you're talking about your words of wisdom. There's some really, really good points in there. I'm just to jump in there at that point. You say people are the most important thing, and that's so common with so many other guests, but usually the emphasis has been about recruiting and about your people. But I don't think it's what you're saying. It's not just about the people that work for you. It's about having respect and trust for your people that do work for you, but also the clients, the people that work with you. So your trusted contractors that you bring in for specialist stuff. So it's all about trusting them and respecting those as well.
Yes.
Which I think is a really good take on the people element. It's not just all about recruiting the great people, which everyone wants to, and focusing on the main event, not getting distracted by the side shows. You talk about let's focus at what we're really good at. I think you're right. I think a lot of people do try and get distracted, or they think, oh, the next shiny object, and they go there. But focusing on what your core business is, you don't necessarily need to diversify. If you have like a real clear picture of what that is in your head, that's really, really important.
Yes. And I think of a time probably 30 years in business. I've been through a few recessions and ups and downs, as you say, and I can remember, for instance, with the sort of financial crash back in sort of 2008 that lasted for a few years. Before then, business was actually really good, but I was getting drawn much more down a contractor route, and I'd always had a love for design. I wanted to focus on that, but because partly where the business was, we were in a lot of demand with designers to build their gardens and so on. I was sort of getting quite drawn into that, and then 2008, for a few years, it did sort of quieten down a bit, and I did then really sort of reset and think what I was interested in, what I really wanted to do was much more. I wanted it to be a more design-led business. And so I sort of made a real conscious effort to sort of refocus on that. And it was only then actually that I joined and became a registered member of the Society of Garden Designers. I'd never found time to do it before, but that was quite a sort of key thing. But it was about deciding to make a bit of time for me and give me some thinking time and decide what I wanted to do, and sort of go forward in a way that I wanted to do. So when I look back on what was a recession, actually that was a really positive turning point for the business. And we really, from that point, we much more built our reputation as a design-led business rather than a business that was a contractor for other people. That's such an important point.
You mentioned, 3 great points there. People, focusing on your core business, but then the third thing you mentioned and alluded to again there is the thinking time part. Now, you can't underestimate the time for peace and quiet and actual clear clarity, of thought. Have you ever heard of the book called Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Yeah, I have. I haven't read it, but I've heard of it.
So there's a brilliant book. Robert Kiyosaki is the author of that book, and the rich dad who they refer to in that book, it's called The Rich Dad. There's a rich dad and there's a poor dad. For those of you who haven't listened to that book, really, really good for building your wealth. But the rich dad is a chap called Keith Cunningham, and he's very, very very rich, obviously, as you'd expect, but also very successful and runs a business in the US. One of his audiobooks, his last audiobook, I think it's called The Road Less Stupid. It's all about thinking time. So he talks about thinking time, and he even sets up a chair in his office that has nothing else apart from a desk and a pad and a chair. And he sits back, asks himself a question, right? Whatever he wants to achieve, closes his eyes and just blocks out all the noise, and actually gives himself thinking time every single day. And he says it's the most valuable part of his whole day. And I think business owners are so used to just running around, chasing their tails, not having time to think. But if you have time to think, you can be a lot less organized and maybe less busy fool territory, and actually thinking, right, what do I really want? How should I do stuff? So that's really important. I'm really quite impressive that you mentioned that in terms of, you know, one of the most important things that you've found in your business, to have that time to actually think.
Yes, yeah.
Doing.
I also found obviously COVID, the sort of COVID years, as I tend to sort of think of it. There was obviously that caused a lot of people a lot of hardship and so on. But I also found that personally for me, you know, we're in our industry, I think we were hugely fortunate for lots of ways. You know, during COVID, but again, it gave me a bit of a chance. I wasn't feeling the need to rush around so much. You know, it was acceptable to spend more time at home and so on. And I also, you know, I actually found that a good time from a business point of view, and being able to sort of think about what I want to do.
Yeah, slow down a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. So at the start there, when I was asking you about the important elements, I think you mentioned there were 4 important elements: the people, the focus, and the thinking. Was there a fourth?
I think I said 3 or 4, didn't I? I think I touched on. I suppose it's looking after your employees, clients. I think there is lots of elements of a business. I suppose the fourth one would be you have to be a good financial manager. You do have to be commercially aware. I don't feel I'm sort of driven by the financial side of things, really. I want to be comfortable. I want to do well. But what I find, if I'm looking after the other things, the financial side tends to look after itself reasonably well. But you can't take your eye off it. It's really important, because if you're looking after the financial side, even if you're looking after it in the background and it's not at the front of your mind all the time, if you don't look after it, then running a business becomes a horrible thing.
Stress.
So I think it is vitally important you are commercially aware, you're reasonably commercially astute, and you keep that side of things well managed.
Absolutely. Well, look, if you don't, you can get some nasty surprises, and then there potentially one day might not be a business. So really important that you do know your numbers and understand it. You haven't got necessarily be an accountant, an expert, but you need to know what the key numbers, like those KPIs, you know, what are the numbers you need to know, you know, the break-even numbers, the gross margin numbers, you know, all those kind of things.
And look, you know, cash flow is important. But if your cash flow is okay, it is nowhere near, you know, what you've really got to look after is your profit and loss, and whether that's you know, and that's in good order. And for the turnover you're doing, are you getting a reasonable return on it, and are you in a part of the market that allows you to do that? So for us, we're, you know, fortunately, what we love to do is high-end design and build. We like building gardens for other designers as well. We want to work in that part of the market that is a little bit less, it's a bit more quality driven and a little less commodity driven. And I think that sort of helps. So trying to make sure you're in the right part of the market is really important.
Oh, absolutely. Especially going into recessions, you know, you want to be at the top end, because not saying they're not affected by the recession, but they're not as affected as the people in the lower to mid end of the market. And that's where you want to be. That's where you tend to win a lot of the national awards, isn't it, for those lovely big projects?
Yeah. That's great. That's great for the teams. It's sort of self-fulfilling, really.
A lot of reward, isn't there? A lot of sort of job satisfaction and achievement. Good. So look, there are a lot of the good things about running a business and to be aware of. In terms of maybe mistakes or potential failures, what kind of maybe major setbacks have you had, or mistakes have you made, or challenges that you've overcome? Can you look back over your 31 years to think, blimey, you know, I wouldn't have done it like that if I'd known then what I know now?
I think my sort of business progression has been a little bit like a stock market graph, where it's got better and better, but there's definitely been ups and downs along the way for various things. I think if I had my time again, it's a tricky one, because I think going into business really young worked out well for me. But if I had my time again, I would probably spend another couple of years working and try and work for at least another company or or two, because I went into it without a lot of management experience, so I didn't really know how to run a business, and as I said, I needed to sort of make it up as I went along. So I'd probably do that a bit differently. I think I would get involved. I did sort of immerse myself in the industry a lot, so I've gone to always lots of sort of trade shows. I've been to Chelsea Flower Show for probably every year for the last 30 odd years, and I've been quite involved. But probably right back in the early day, I would have probably even tried to do a bit more of that, to find out how other people did things. So I think I probably banged my head against the wall quite a bit when I was trying to grow the business. I think the sort of real challenges I've had, it probably comes back to sort of team building and key people. I think I've been really fortunate over 30 years. We've had sort of fantastic, wonderful clients by and large. Like everybody, I've probably had the odd project that has been really challenging. I get touch wood, in 30 years, we've never had any significant bad debts.
Yeah, touch wood.
We've had a few, minorly painful ones. I think what I've probably found most difficult is every time I've tried to move the business to the next level, I have always felt I've had to sort of bang my head against the wall, or to try and break through and working out how to do it. I can remember sort of early days, trying to get the first employee in the business, and we'd interviewed somebody. They had agreed a start date. It was a couple of months down the line, and anyway, we held out hope for this employee. They sort of started it, but they didn't work out. Literally within a week, it didn't work out. And I think we had a couple of goes trying to get our first employee. We had sort of a couple of attempts at it, and we didn't get anybody to stick. And then we found somebody who was great, and that all became a bit easier. And then we started to employ a few more people. And so when we had a good person or two, that element of it became a bit easier. But initially it was really hard, and possibly at that point it was almost the only time I ever thought about, I'm not going to do this. I can't. I won't succeed at it. But I did stick with it. And then I think when when I wanted to stop working on site at all myself, and just concentrate on design and management, that was really difficult. I got the financial model completely changes, and I didn't really sort of realize that for a year or so, because when you're suddenly not working for your own wages, and I think for very sort of young people at this stage trying to get them to the next level, that's quite a difficult bit, because you've got to have people you really trust doing the work, but then you've got to somehow make enough money that there's enough profit in the projects so that pays you as a manager. And if you're designing as well, of course, you hope to get an income from that. So I had that when I was trying to get teams on site. That was really challenging, but I did always, I always stuck with it, and tried slightly different angles to make the same thing work. And I think the same when I started to have managers and office people. It was exactly the same barrier, really. I had a few. I promoted my first manager. I promoted them from team level to a manager, and at the time I didn't realize it was a completely different skill set, and I couldn't make that work, and that didn't work. So I sort of lost a manager and a team leader, because it didn't work out, and it was too stressful for them because they didn't have the skills and so on. So at every point I felt like I was sort of having to sort of learn it for myself, or reinvent the wheel a bit. And then I sort of, realized, okay, this is how I need to go about it a bit differently, and became a bit more successful about building an office team. It's still absolutely got its challenges, and having the right site people is still a challenge, but somehow it can be easier to employ 20 people than it is to employ 1 or 2 people. Not least because you've always got maybe some people coming in and some people going out. Whereas if you've got one or two, you're suddenly losing all or half your workforce if something goes wrong. I think I've possibly lost a few key people over the years. In hindsight, I would have loved to have kept in the business. Most of the time, they've gone on to do. A lot of the time, I'm sure other people in my position have the same experience, but people will want to go and set their own business up. And it's really hard to stand in somebody's way if they want to do what I wanted to do. And there are a few relatively successful businesses around me that are run by people that used to work for me, and I'm quite proud of that. And I've had other people that have gone off to do it, and they've come back and worked for me as well.
Yeah, it's funny that it's massive kind of learning curve, isn't it? I mean, you don't wake up one day and knowing how to recruit great people, how to manage great people, and there's that element of doubt, isn't there? That if you don't understand how to do something, you're out of your comfort zone. You start doubting yourself, thinking, "Oh, am I set up for this?" And I think it's just because you don't have the knowledge. It's like anything in life. When you don't know how to do something, it's really difficult and confusing. You feel out your depth. As soon as you learn how to do it, either from others, like you said earlier, learn from others in the industry, go and see people that have done it all right and successfully. But these days, I think people are in a much, much better position because we didn't have the internet in 1991. Couldn't go onto Google, couldn't go onto YouTube. You had to go to the library probably and go and find a book.
Yeah. I think one of the things I found most beneficial when I was sort of early days of the business was I wanted to join Barley, so there's a strong link with Barley, my college, Merris Wood. So I was, as soon as I was sort of out in industry, I was really tuned into being part of getting involved with Barley. So as soon as I could, the business became a Barley member. I went along to a lot of the North Thames meetings, and I met a lot of people there. It was great. So I would. Mark Gregory was chair of North Thames when I joined up, and he's a few years older than me, but I could I met quite a few people who were very sort of generous with their advice and time, and I'm always sort of grateful for Mark. But the likes of Mark, John O'Connor, the late great John O'Connor, who would give me sort of pearls of wisdom, and I would go along and chat about some problem I was having. And you chat to other people, and you'd either realise that they might have got a better way of doing it, and generally they're always free with their advice. Or they'd say, "Oh, we've got exactly the same problems, and we're banging our heads against the wall as well." But you sort of realise you're not alone.
But the industry's so abundant, isn't it? Every one of a lot of the people I've had on this podcast have all said, ask people. You've got support. You've got SGD. You've got Barley. You've got APL. You've got all these other organisations that you can tap into, haven't you? Pro landscaper stuff as well. It's all out there, and everyone's open to helping others because everyone's been in that situation, and they know how hard that is sometimes, and how lonely that can be on your own.
I think it's a great industry for that. I think what you've also just said about being lonely, I think it's a really important point, because it is, if you're a business owner and you're not sure where to go or what to do, I would just say, look, go, depending on what sort of sector you're in, get involved with the SGD, get involved with Barley, go and meet people who are facing the same difficulties. It is a sort of club where it is very supportive. And probably the only thing I'd add to that as well, I think, is if you're sort of learning to manage and you want to set up a business, is I think you can learn a lot from other people, but I think you also need to sort of learn to do it your own way a bit as well. I know
your own style of it.
I looked at people like John O'Connor and Mark Gregory, who had great businesses at the time, and I sort of felt a little bit, I've got, if I'm going to be, I've got to be like them, and they're quite extrovert characters. Personally, I'm much more sort of introverted, and I realised I had to find a way of doing it myself.
Your style,
I think, fortunately, your management styles have changed a lot over the years. The days of the likes of sort of the Alex Ferguson type style of management is sort of gone.
Can't get away from that. Away with that anymore.
And for me, I feel much more comfortable trying to sort of talk to people individually and sort of encourage and motivate them, but not in a sort of particularly extrovert way. I think it is important. People want to develop a business to realize that they've got to sort of develop their own style and do it in a way that they're comfortable with, because you can't be out of your comfort zone all the time.
No. You can't pretend to be someone you're not as well.
No.
You've got to play. Everyone's got their strengths and their way of doing things, and everyone's different, aren't they? So, what have you found the most rewarding parts of running your own business and being in business for yourself?
I think it's the thing I probably find the most rewarding thing is when I've got people who've come through the business and they're doing well, they're building quality projects, where they're sort of gardening or building landscapes or designing. But when somebody's really developed and they become what I sort of call a self-directed person, I think that's probably one of the most rewarding things, when the team around you is doing really well and they're doing stuff where your sort of intervention is a bit less. I think probably the most satisfying thing. I mean, I love when the business, you know, gets a good accolade, you know, it wins an award or something. That's great. It's also it is so quite a fleeting thing, and it's not as long lasting as if you have a project that hasn't gone well, for instance. You know, that can be painful for a long time. But I think the really rewarding thing is just when the business is working really well and we are building nice projects. It's in harmony. The teams are happy. We've got happy clients, happy teams. And if you can just sort of bottle that and keep it going, that probably is the most rewarding thing. And occasionally, so winning awards are great and they're really important for the business. But occasionally, I'll get something out of the blue from a client, and it might be I got something a little while ago from a client who I hadn't really been in touch with or seen for a couple of years, and I got a sort of one-liner message from them. And it was my garden makes me happy every day.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. And that was, you know, that little moments like that.
Yeah. That's the whole reason, isn't it? It's like that's why we do what we do. Yeah, it's our purpose. Yeah.
So the moments of joy like that are great, because you will spend a lot of time running a business grappling with gnarly problems and gnarly issues and trying to get things back on track how you want them to. But yeah, so and enjoy those moments. So when
it's nice that people actually feel the need to actually tell you that, you know, to give you that feedback, because they might think that, all your clients must think that. I'm sure they do all the time, every summer. But for them to actually make the effort to go, you know what, I'm loving my garden every day. That's what you're in it for, isn't it? That's the bit that gets you going. That's the bit that is the passion, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the joy of industry, that we do make people happy, and we do.
Creating happy memories in their gardens with their families and chilling out time and
absolutely
entertaining friends. That's what you know, the garden gives you, isn't it?
So when that you get evidence of that, that's probably the most satisfying part.
You know you're doing the right thing then, don't you? I love your description there. You're a self-directed person. I've not heard that one before. I think that's
well, self-directed. It's what we try and create: self-directed teams.
I'm gonna steal that one, if that's all right.
You can have it, but it's when you've got a team that they sort of know how they know when to report. They sort of know when not to. And I look to get my teams to sort of take up the sort of highest level of management they possibly can themselves.
Brilliant.
And I really encourage that, because that takes the strain off me. It gives them more satisfaction. I think they know they've got the trust. They've got
more autonomy. More responsibility. And trust, doesn't it?
And they're responsible for the decisions, and hopefully most of the time they make good ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, some people, if you're a bit of a control freak, then people are scared to make any kind of decisions. But if you give them, you know, the opportunity to support a bit of risk taking, but as long as they're well thought out and not silly risks, but calculated decisions, then absolutely need to encourage that kind of stuff. Otherwise, the emphasis is always on you. The onus is on you to come up with all the ideas, and people are scared to make any decisions for themselves. So, right, I think I've got another one or two questions for you, James. I'm in the interest of time, I know that you're a busy man, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. If you had any advice for anyone who's listening to this at the moment and they're struggling in their business, or they've got to a point in their business where they're stuck and they can't make that next step up to the next level. They don't know what steps to take. What kind of advice would you give them?
So again, for me, I can only really give it in sort of how I've really done things. So a couple of things. I've always stuck with things. So I think being tenacious is actually really important. I think you've got to be careful if you're digging a hole and you're doing things wrong. You don't want to keep digging that hole.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
But if you are, if you have got your eyes sort of, you're focused on the end game and you know what you want, I think you've really got to stick with it. I am a huge believer in getting sort of time out to do things around the industry, do other things in life as well, of course. But I think going back to making sure you're involved in trade things. If you're a designer, get yourself involved.
Yeah.
Immerse yourself with the SGD.
Yeah.
Go to Barley meetings. Get yourself along to Chelsea Flower Show and other shows. Talk to lots of people in the industry who are. I've always found them very generous with their advice.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to just sort of keep plugging away and don't try not to get too disheartened because you've tried something 2 or 3 times and it hasn't worked. And I think, if you have got your eye on your goal and you think you know what the steps are, you've got to keep moving to those steps. But of course, don't, if you're in financial trouble or something, don't keep digging a hole.
No.
Then you probably need a different type of advice.
I think that's a really, really good point. I've not had that one before about being tenacious. I think to have tenacity is great, and to have that belief and faith that you're going in the right direction. Obviously, like you say, not when you're going in the wrong direction or digging the hole. We don't want to keep digging it that much longer or deeper. But talking to others, I think, really helps that, doesn't it? Sort of getting out there, speaking to other people, getting involved with all the brilliant organisations, governing bodies that there are out there.
Sometimes you need a different angle. Think about something in a different way.
Yeah, because sometimes it can sort of test your judgment. Maybe thinking this way and it's not working. But sometimes getting out there and talking to people either confirms it or rightly or wrongly. So I think that's brilliant advice. And you've got to be resilient, haven't you? And you've got to persevere, and you've got to have that faith and belief that actually you've got to be quite tough in business, haven't you?
I think resilience is another key thing. Actually, I think sort of going back to what I was saying about different characters, different styles, extroverts, introverts, and so on. I think you can do whatever your personality type. I think you can do it, and there's a place for you. You just need to go about it a little bit differently. But the one thing I think most people have in common that do build a business over quite a few years, it is resilience. So you do need a reason about resilience, because you are going to get knocks.
Absolutely, it's business, isn't it? That's business.
You'll probably get a few small knocks, or possibly even every day, but you've got to be able to work through them, and you can't let them sway you from your path too much.
Yeah, you've got to become bulletproof, haven't you, really? But as long as you've got that vision of what you're trying to achieve and keeping focused on that, and having belief in that, you've got to be able to roll with the punches to some degree, and you've got to be able to get up when things are not going your way, and keep getting up. And who was it that said? I think it was Rocky Balboa about sometimes you got to keep getting hit. You're going to get hit no matter what life chucks at you. You've got to keep getting up and get up and get hit. You're going to get hit because life will do that to you, and it's survival of the fittest and the strongest, really, in business. Otherwise, it can be quite a tough gig, quite a lonely thing, quite a lonely place.
Yes,
I think we're done, James. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
We have been talking for quite a while now, so I don't want to keep you any longer, but there's been some brilliant insights there, some really, really useful takes on your experience of being in business for all those years. So lots of wisdom. If someone would like to get in touch with you, either to pick your brains or to ask you a question, or for you to be that person where they can reach out and support you, or to if they're interested in taking on your services of garden design and build, what would be the best way for them to contact you personally?
The best way is via our website, which is www.thegardenco.co.uk, or my personal email address is james@thegardenco.co.uk.
Perfect.
Or if people are looking for a career in landscape or design, we're always looking for good people, and at the moment we are looking at my next barrier is our succession planning.
Right.
So we're also looking at bringing on a senior manager as well.
Right. Well, look, the best companies attract the best people, and you've just won one of the major awards in the industry. So if there's ever a good time to join the garden company, then it's definitely got to be you. It's got to be now, isn't it? So let's hope that you can attract the best, because you're doing great things in the industry. Thanks, James. Really appreciate all your time. Thanks for accepting this invitation. I've been hounding you for a while. You've done it, and we've achieved it. So thanks for your time.
It's been a pleasure, Nick. Thank you.
I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Cheers, James. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Grow Landscapers podcast. To get in touch and see how we can help you with your business by emailing nick@nickruddle.com.